Do you guys remember those old MMOs where like the big like selling point of like Warhammer Online, if anybody remembers this, was when like it's like, okay, we can have like 300 players on a screen. They're all doing something. Like Dark Age of Camelot, you can have like 100 players on a screen or 200 players on a screen. They're all fighting. You can do that with thousands of people on Stadia. This tech will change everything about gaming. In the same way that GameStop lost 36% of its shareholder value, right? Because GameStop just doesn't make sense anymore. The way that going to, like, I remember, do you guys remember this shit? Any people in here? When the new Call of Duty came out, I would stand in line at GameStop and I would wait for the new Call of Duty at midnight. I would stand in line at GameStop with a bunch of nerds and I would wait for them to open up and I would go in and I'd pick up my game and I'd be so fucking excited. I'd come back and I'd play it all night. That shit, I did that for Call of Duty. I did that for like Halo. I did that for all kinds of stuff, dude. And like that, like GameStop used to pop off, dude. You would go into GameStop, you'd pick up your game. You'd have like people chilling there, be like super cool. Nowadays, it's like I just look at the release date for when the game is gonna come out, and it's like, oh, releases in like 6 hours. Okay, I download the game. It's fucking preloaded. It's like all ready to go, and then I just hit play and I'm there, right? It fundamentally changed the way that that we think about gaming. GameStop didn't adapt, right? And as a result, like GameStop is failing as a business. They've had 5 CEOs in like since 2015. They can't figure out how to change their business model. And like if you brought me in as CEO of GameStop, I wouldn't know what the f to tell them. I wouldn't know, you know? It would be really hard to figure out where they go from here. And in the same way, the idea of like downloading a game on Steam and having like just everything is always going to move towards greater convenience, right? Human beings are just going to constantly want stuff easier and faster, easier and faster, easier and faster. Downloading a game on Steam, installing it on your computer, having to buy a PC, going out to like buy the PC, maybe building the whole thing yourself, making sure you have a GeForce RTX 93 backflip 1080 5000 pound in the ass, like whatever, like NVIDIA ATI RTX mobile graphics card. Okay, you don't have to think about that. You just buy a box in it, and it has a thing. And then you just put the box down, you plug it in, and it goes, hi, what game do you want to play? And you're like, I want to play, I don't know, Rainbow Six. And then it's like, okay. And then you click a button, you put your Ethernet, you don't even put an Ethernet cord in. It connects wirelessly to 5G, and it's just literally a box. And then all you have to do is plug this shit in. And then you go on your browser, and then you have the game. That's it. Like, and it's over. Like, and like I'm gonna be streaming to you guys in 10 years, and I don't even know if I'm gonna be on Twitch. I'm probably gonna be on Stadia, and I might be broadcasting into your fucking mind. I don't even know. Like, you might be receiving this through glasses in 10 years, and I'm gonna be like, dudes, do you remember when you had to download games on Steam? Do you remember that shit? Where it's like, we had to like download games on Steam. We had to like install Steam, and we had to like click the button and all that shit, and it was like, like that was so dumb, right? Everyone's gonna be spamming the lol, except it's gonna be like a robotic lol. It's gonna be like instead of typing LUL, because that's too hard, you're just gonna type like, you're gonna think lol, and then it's gonna post in chat. Physical downloading is gonna be a joke, okay? And like everyone's just it's gonna be like a little emote. And the lols will just pop up in your little glasses. Installing games is going to be a joke. Downloading games is a joke. Takes too much time. Building hardware, fuck that. Takes way too much time, right? Just give me the Google box. The Google box sits on my desk, and then it connects to wireless, 5G. It has a gigabyte down and up. It connects to Stadia. There's no lag. It just goes in, and if I want to play with people or stream, I just stream, and it just happens. Oh, and then, by the way, it's collecting all of your fucking information, which it then sells to third-party companies and makes billions and trillions of dollars. Yeah, I don't know, dudes. TLDR, man. Stadia is going to change everything. Just the fact that you can move off of hardware is so important, that servers are going to handle hardware for you. And I do believe, like, I think there'll be some initial hiccups and stuff like that. I mean, I'm definitely going to pre-order it, but the implications of the technology and everything else that they've shown, a lot of what they haven't talked about, which is like the streaming capability and the way that that's going to plug into YouTube, is going to have such enormous implications for like how the future of gaming is going to evolve. And I really do think that like Google is primed right now to take on everybody in terms of like streaming and content generation. I think that with it as it is right now, unless Amazon is gonna do something drastic with Twitch, I think Google will probably be like the place for content. Like I think live streaming will eventually filter over to YouTube gaming and Stadia, because it's gonna be so much easier to interact with your community and to get people involved. Because I think that the things that are really amazing about this, one is like removing the hardware problem, which is just, and then another one is like streaming capability on Stadia, plus integration with YouTube. And then the second one is like standardized code on the Stadia platform. And I think removing the hardware problem, which is basically like, okay, you're no longer going to get limited by your 1080 Ti or whatever that can't run a game at ultra settings after 2 years. Like, you're always going to be able to run a game at ultra settings. And because of the way that they're going to standardize code on the Stadia platform, every developer will be able to code a game to its max settings, and you'll always be able to play a game in 4K, 60 FPS, 5.1 surround system everywhere. And like, again, like I think that the window for this is like 3 to 5 years, and it might be even a little bit longer. But at the point where we are able to just play any game on our browser with max settings, and we don't have to worry about any of the hardware, and developers can code a game literally to their heart's content. As much as they want to add into the game, there are no hardware limitations. It's almost impossible to imagine, like, if you're going to build something like Baldur's Gate, you have to consider a lot of, like, inherent hardware difficulties that are just in that game. Let me give you an example with, like, Path of Exile, one of my favorite games of all time. Path of Exile, a big problem with Path of Exile is there's so many calculations going on the screen that it's very hard sometimes to just like do certain things with the game, like add certain things into the game, because inherently some percentage of PCs are just not going to be able to process it. Or like server side, you're not going to be able to process it because there's just too much going on. EVE Online has the same problem, right? Because it calculates like every missile and every laser and every trajectory and everything like that. That there are limitations built into games because of hardware and because of server problems. When all that gets taken away, you can the amount of crazy stuff that a developer can do with a game it's almost unimaginable what you can do. That if you make a game exclusively for Stadia with no hardware limitations and no server limitations, the stuff that you can do is insane. We're talking like thousands and thousands of enemies on a screen, right? Thousands and thousands of players on a screen. All of those dreams, you guys remember those old MMOs where like the big like selling point of like Warhammer Online, if anybody remembers this, was when like it's like, okay, we can have like 300 players on a screen. They're all doing something. Like Dark Age of Camelot, you can have like 100 players on a screen or 200 players on a screen. They're all fighting. You can do that with thousands of people on Stadia. And then you could stream that experience with everybody being on that server and connecting to that shard in real time through, and all that would be connected to your YouTube, and everybody that has a Google account and would be able to do it instantaneously on that shard. That's what I say is when I'm saying that like Stadia changes the whole thing about gaming. I cannot stress enough how removing the hardware limitation of things doesn't just affect you, the gamer, for playing on ultra quality. Like you might think that it's like, oh yeah, removing the hardware problem is cool because I don't have to have a max PC. And that is true, but the real implication of it is on the developer side. It's enabling developers to do things that would otherwise have been impossible because the server architecture of Google will now support that. And there's essentially no limitation to what you can do. If you want to have space battles with 30,000 people in that battle, and you want to have complex technical calculations and algorithms going on, but like for everything from like who's firing at who, in a lagless infrastructure, you can do that on Stadia. That's impossible right now. The stuff that EVE and like Path of Exile has only ever dreamed of is possible. If you want to have a BR with 10,000 players, you can do that on Stadia. Right? Because it's all hosted on Google servers. It eliminates all the hardware. Every single person is playing that at max settings with no lag. All that stuff is possible on Stadia. It may not be possible right now, but a lot of it is possible. In 3 to 5 years, or maximum, like absolute maximum 10 years, that is how everybody will be gaming. And that is why I'm so excited about the Stadia platform. because I think that it really changes the way that we even look at games. And if you look at the Stadia announcement from before, where they're using technology that actually allows you to, like, because there's a standardized code on the Stadia platform. What I mean by standardized code is there is a one of the things they showed was there's like a filter, and like if you have a game with a person walking around a world, you can just put a filter over it, and now all of a sudden it's like a night, and then it's like day. You don't have to code that in. It's just a filter that you put over something. And that changes that makes it more accessible for people that don't have huge development teams of like 100 people to code games on Stadia. There's a world where you might actually be able to code a game on Stadia because you could just use filters and you just have an idea and you just build a game. So very similar to like a very advanced version of RPG Maker. Anybody old enough to remember RPG Maker? You could literally have like an RPG Maker type thing where you're putting filters over on a server and you're building a game from the ground up and you don't use any code. You don't have to know how to code. You don't have to have a development team. All that is possible on Stadia as well. So there's so many ways that this revolutionizes the gaming as we know it. And like, I really do wonder what someone like Twitch will do when faced with something like this, where it's like, when you have all of this at your fingertips with something like Stadia, how does Amazon respond to this, right? Like Apple's responding to some extent through like Apple Arcade, because they've identified that this is going to capture the gaming market in a huge way. But the onus is really on Amazon and Twitch to figure out how to compete with this, and I don't know how you do it. So when I say that Stadia is going to change the world, I really think it's going to change the world in these three ways. And to be clear, I guess because I want to make a really important distinction, it could be that Google fails this, because a lot of people say, well, Devin, like, what about like all the projects that Google has failed? The thing is that Google has like two ways of doing things, right? They have like an R&D kind of like skunkworks type of thing that just produces products like Google Plus and stuff like that. And those products are kind of like hit or miss, and they kind of just like look for consumer adoption. And if they get consumer adoption, then they keep developing it, like Gmail. But if they don't get consumer adoption, they're okay to like break it and just depreciate it. But then there's coordinated efforts that Google does into major industries that take years. So with Stadia, Google has been hiring key gaming executives into Stadia for the last 3 years. This is not just like an R&D project that they're doing. This is a multi-million-dollar, maybe multi-billion-dollar eventually investment that they're making into controlling the state of gaming. And that's a very different initiative than like, oh yeah, we made like Google URL shortener and not enough people use it, so we're depreciating it. You can't compare the two. When Google wants to do something and they put the full force of their energy behind it, it's a totally different game plan than if they want to do something like Google URL shortener. That's what we're dealing with Stadia. Stadia has been hiring some of the best gaming executives in the industry for the last 2 to 3 years before they even announced that this was a thing. They've been working on it. So they already have a cohesive product and hundreds of millions of dollars invested in that product before they ever even announced that this was happening. This is a major push from Google to do something real in the gaming industry. They've identified this as a vertical that they need to capture because gaming is getting huge. It has nowhere to go but up. And they've identified that they can do something here with their very unique server architecture that only them and a few other companies have. I can only think of 3 companies on earth that can do something like this. Google is one, AWS is another, so Amazon, and then Azure, which is on Microsoft. Anybody that hosts a gigantic server farm that can essentially compute data and loan data can do this. It's a very small number of people that can actually do this or compete with this. Stadia is in a position, Google by proxy in a position through Stadia to completely capture the gaming market through this and completely invalidate things like Steam, things like Twitch, everything around. And it's like, if you don't see this, it's because you're not thinking about the implications of eliminating some of these technological barriers that we have literally had since the inception of the microchip. Ever since that existed, we've had technical limitations that are now possible to be eliminated through cloud computing. The implications of that are not what I've just not just what I've told you now. They're impossible to imagine. There's a million different things that I haven't even thought of that can be done with that. The implications are insane. So I don't know, like TLDR, like I just think, I really do think that Stadia is in a position to change everything. And I'm so excited about the future of gaming. In the same way that like now we download games at home and you're not in a line at GameStop waiting for the Call of Duty midnight release drop. Like it'll be that kind of change. It'll be a fundamental way in the way that we consume gaming as a whole. And it's so cool. So